Okay, we are live, and of course, we have limited time today, so everything went wrong. Um, Sorry to everybody for the delay, and jump on board because this is going to be really worth your time. I'm here with Katie Hurley, a child and adolescent psychotherapist, parenting expert, and a writer. And you should check out her latest book, A Year of Positive Thinking for Teens, Daily Motivation to Beat Stress, Inspire Happiness, and Achieve Your Goals. And who doesn't want that? So our topic today, Katie, we're going to talk about co-parenting during COVID, which, I think about my own house and how complicated it's been even under the same roof to get everybody on the same page of what we're looking to do. So how hard is it? What are you hearing about how challenging it is at this moment to get two households to agree?
I mean, I think it's hard. I think it depends on the nature of the relationship. Can you hear me okay? I feel like I'm garbled.
You're good. You're good.
You can. Okay. Sorry about that. So it depends on the nature of the co-parenting relationship. And, but I think parents are trying extra hard right now to make things work and to stick to some sort of a schedule. What's difficult is sometimes that means, and this is especially hard for teenagers, fewer interactions in each community so that they can move freely between homes. And that's been a struggle right now.
So the kids are having a hard time because they have more restrictions because they're going between two homes. It's all about the parents being able to agree on what those restrictions are.
I think with teenagers in general, you have, older kids. It's just hard right now to really impart to them how important it is to, keep their masks on and to do different, protocols that we're all trying to do to keep everybody healthy. And so, when people are co-parenting and kids are going back and forth between homes, it can be hard to agree on, well, who are they allowed to see? Who's in their so-called bubble? How do we make that work? How do we keep everybody safe? So it just takes a lot of really clear, unemotional communication, which is difficult when you're dealing with different schedules, different homes, different work life, just different balances. So trying to meet in the middle is really important right now. But I am hearing that it's just, for some families, it's kind of going okay. And for others, it's just really hard. And one thing I hear from teenagers all the time is they feel like their voice kind of gets lost in the mix. Like they don't get to decide much, at this time when we're asking them to learn to be independent and responsible, they're feeling like they've lost all independence and don't get any decisions regarding this stuff.
Well, that's such a point that I hadn't thought of. There can be so much difficulty between the relationship of the co-parents that gets lost in the mix. Do you think is that an important component for co-parenting, to also let is it middle school and high school or only older kids? What is it? Who gets
I mean, I hear a lot from high schoolers that they struggle with the transitions. I mean, I think, in the best of times, non-pandemic, middle schoolers sort of are shuffled around from thing to thing. And in high school, they're really tasked with figuring out who they are. What is it that they like to do after school? What are they allowed to do after school? And a lot of that's been lost because a lot of them are learning in a hybrid model. They're not playing their sports anymore. So what they're wanting to do is connect with friends more than just online. And they're not really getting much of a voice in that. And that's hard because, and there's no easy answer. I mean, I'm not going to say to you, yes, they should be running the show, because that's not true. Teenagers' brains are not fully developed and they're capable of making spectacularly poor decisions, even on the best days. So, they do need boundaries and they need, to know what the rules are. But it's also important to hear them out and listen to them. And especially right now, when they're trying to communicate, this is what I feel like I need, and this is what will help me emotionally. I think it's just important that we hear them out and try to meet them in the middle a little bit.
So I really love that point. I hadn't thought about it at all, just in general. But I often wonder as a parent whether, when I say to my kid, what do you think about this? I'd love to hear what you think, that their assumption is that now they will get what they've said.
Yeah.
And so it goes into this whole other, now I've just opened up like a third person to weigh in, and they're only getting to be heard. They're not really getting a full vote.
Yeah, and I think it's important to be honest about that and to say that I want to know what you think. I want to know what you feel like your needs are right now. I can't promise that we can meet all those needs. We have a lot of moving parts that we have to deal with and that we need to think about. but I would like to hear what you're feeling and what you're going through. We can't assume that we know what they're enduring right now because we don't. We're not them.
Yeah, that's so gentle. That's so nice. Okay, so we are not telling anybody who's listening that this is hard. They know it already.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so what we can offer up right now is if you're looking for a reset, like it's been a disaster, or even just not as you hoped. How do two people who may be seeing the world very differently right now, how do you reset the button at this moment so that maybe it's a little less tense and there's a little less inflamed emotions?
Well, I think a couple things. I mean, one is if things are really inflamed and the co-parenting is just really difficult for whatever reason, this is where mediators can be very helpful. They can come in and look at the different situations from a objective perspective and try and help you work out schedules and answer the questions that need answering. So that's an option that is low cost and sometimes can really be a lifesaver in terms of bridging that gap of communication. And then it just becomes a matter of knowing your style of communication, knowing your ex-partner's style of communication and what works best. Some people really communicate effectively and efficiently over email. Some people get into wars over email. Text messaging can go from cordial to not cordial in a hot second. So it really depends on the adults sort of assessing their own emotional barometer, knowing where they are and how they're feeling, being upfront and honest about that. I think right now it's safe to assume that most people are on a short fuse with the double whammy pandemic holiday season. So, let's assume that everybody's just a little bit compromised and that we all need a little bit more listening and a little less quick, snappy reactions. So it becomes a matter of what's your best form of communication. Is it a quick conversation? Is it over text message? Is it email? And then just try to keep it to, the facts, the needs of the kids, the schedules that you're trying to create and how you're going to make those schedules happen. So, transportation issues, holidays are hard, whether you're celebrating Hanukkah or Christmas or something else. The holidays can be hard in terms of, first of all, shuffling the kids around. They don't always like it. It can feel overwhelming for them. And then trying to find, equal time or, sometimes people have holiday schedules already predetermined from, court paperwork, court documents. Sometimes people go every other or sort of wing it each year, depending on their co-parenting relationship. It's just right now this year important to be really forthcoming and really just let the kids know exactly what's happening and come up with clear-cut boundaries and schedules.
Okay, so for a lot of people, that's just not working because it takes two people to have, like, you can come into the situation with your best self, but maybe you don't have a partner in that story. So when you bring up mediator, how do you find a mediator? Is that a therapist? Is that a court person? Who's the mediator in this story?
Oftentimes most people have had an attorney and they can recommend a mediator. It doesn't need to be a therapist. It's just somebody who can, mediate between two people. So sit in a room and because you don't have to have an attorney to get divorced in most states. You can have a mediator handle the paperwork as long as you guys are somewhat on the same page in terms of custody and finances and medical decisions. I mean, all of these things are really important. There's a million decisions that go into raising kids, particularly when you separate, you realize how many tiny little decisions get made every single day of every single week. So from schooling to sports to medical decisions to, all sorts of extras. And then there's the custody and where are they living and how does that play out? And then there's the holidays on top of that. So there are a lot of little decisions. Mediators can go into can help figure out all of these arrangements between the two people, sort of bridge the gap of communication and then bring it to the court to, get the paperwork signed. This can also be done with attorneys. If people already have their attorneys, mediators tend to be a much more cost effective way of basically the same end goal.
It just seems like such a recipe for success to have a third party if you're at that point where the two of you just can't be in a conversation because, there are people who still don't think we have a pandemic and that you don't need masks. And then there are other people who have, are immunocompromised and not leaving their house and everywhere in between. So if you can't find a place to meet, that sounds like probably your best bet, right?
Yeah, it can be a really great option to just help people get on a, you're maybe never going to be on the same page, but you can be in the same chapter. So
Mm.
you can be sort of similar page and work out the nuts and bolts in a way that mostly works for everyone. I mean, that's kind of the goal. And again, we really want to think about the kids in this. We want to think about the teens and how these decisions impact them and what's best for them.
Yeah, so I was thinking about how often we talk about put the kids first, and how, like, during the pandemic, that's so challenging because the health and safety balanced with the mental health, like, it's very hard to decide that you're not gonna let the other parent see the kid because of X, Y, or Z, or vice versa. That, it's really complicated.
It is really complicated. And that's where, people who are immunocompromised, that's where things like that kind of come into play. And I mean, for the most part, for the people that I'm working with and interacting with, I'm seeing parents trying really hard to find ways for kids to see everybody. And if they have to lengthen it so that it's every 2 weeks instead of every other week, so that they're kind of having 2 weeks in one place and then they switch. And then, because that sort of magic 10 to 14 day window of, quote unquote quarantine when you travel. But so they're finding all kinds of creative ways to do this. And then some families are not, some families are struggling and finding it difficult. Some teenagers are feeling fearful and don't want to be moving around because the message they keep hearing is don't move around, stay at home. It's getting worse. It's getting worse. So we're kind of, attacking them with this is getting worse. You guys are super spreaders. You need to stay put and wear your mask. But then also you have to switch houses every 10 days or so. So sometimes they're feeling fearful and we need to talk to them about that and empower them. Let them know that both houses are safe and clean for them, that you're doing what you can to mitigate any sort of, virus spread between the two homes. And nothing's perfect. We know this. Nothing's ever perfect. And all you can do right now is your best. Sometimes that means that it's not equal time right now.
Okay, well, this takes me to our last question, which is just such a heartbreaking one. And we heard it from a parent. What if it's your turn to have the kids for the holidays and the kids want to go to the other parent?
This is so hard. And I hear this every year anyway, regardless of our current world affairs. And sometimes kids say that because what they're trying to say is, I don't like it that I don't get to see both parents for this holiday. They're not trying to, when I ask kids why they choose those words, usually what they're saying is, well, they tell me where to go and I don't get to choose and I want to see both my parents. And that's not fair. Holidays can feel very unfair for kids of divorce at any age. And sometimes we think that teenagers outgrow it or they just kind of go with the flow. And they don't. Teenagers don't always go with the flow. They have big feelings too, even if they don't always express them. So, I think it's hard to hear that. It's really hard to hear that. It's easy for me to say, don't take it personally. And harder for you to do if your child has just said that to you. But what I would respond to that is, it sounds like you really miss, mom or dad or mom or, whoever the other partner is. It sounds like you really miss that person. It sounds like you really miss the days when we were all in one house together. What can we do that's special with other parent the day after Hanukkah, the day after Christmas, the day after Kwanzaa, whatever it is. So try and figure out how you can get the child with both parents for some portion of the holiday. That's not always easy if you're traveling between states or, long distances, which sometimes happens. Can you Zoom parents in? Is that a possibility? Can they be Zoomed or FaceTimed in? What this year has taught us is that we can Zoom into anything. So, maybe in the past that wasn't something that you thought about, but maybe this year you do Zoom in your the other parent during a dinner or during present opening or something.
So that is such good advice. And all I keep thinking is I have to not be hurt first, right?
Yeah,
like I have to recognize that it's not a knife to my heart. That's not the intent. So are you saying that that's typically not what the kids mean?
It's typically not what they mean. What they mean is, I want everybody back together. I want it to feel fair for me. Kids live in fair versus unfair, and it feels unfair when they don't get to see both parents for big things. It comes up around graduations, birthdays, holidays, all kinds of big milestones and big events, because it does feel unfair that you don't get to have what you want, which is both parents around.
All right, to everybody confronting this right now, I guess we all have to have thick skins and look to our kids, what's working for them, and then maybe get a mediator. And this is all such good advice from Katie Hurley. Thank you for fitting us in. This was really a wonderful, it's 15 minutes of great advice. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you for having me. And I just want to end this with also, it's okay to cry. It's okay to tell your kids, this is hard for me too, and I feel sad too. We don't have to pretend.
Great ending. Thank you so much.